everyone, and welcome to The Darkest Hour. I'm your host, Amanda Jane. Did you know the word poltergeist translates literally from German as knocking spirit? The German verb poltern means to knock, and Geist is the German word for spirit, which is fitting because one of the tricks a poltergeist is known for is making knocking noises. What's less fitting today is the spirit part. We've retained the name poltergeist likely due to our common association with the phenomenon, but unlike ghosts, who are believed to be the spirits of the deceased, poltergeists are actually thought to be a form of unconscious psychic energy manifested by living individuals, or residual energy from the living. If a home experiences a great deal of intense emotions, traumatic events, or repetitive negative behaviors, some believe that strong residual energy can remain in the home even after the people responsible for the energy have moved. But I believe the main difference between a ghost and a poltergeist lies in their behavior, along with their ability to manifest practically anywhere. A poltergeist's presence is typically characterized by chaotic and disruptive behavior. Not just knocking and flickering lights, they've also been known to physically harm people in some cases, whereas ghosts are generally considered to be non-violent and often associated with specific places, manifesting as apparitions or sounds. Well, I don't know about you, but I think these guys make ghosts look pretty good. And I'll take a wandering spirit over vengeful energy any day. But truly, my friends, this is why it's never a bad idea to cleanse a new space. In fact, I highly recommend it, because you just never know what you're walking into. So, let's get started, shall we? Several years ago, my husband and I purchased our first home in Hoquiam, Washington. We grew up in Grace Harbor and never wanted to leave the coast. It's near the only McDonald's in town. If you know Hoquiam, you know the general 3-block radius I'm talking about. Though we don't live there anymore, I don't want to get too specific and have some crazy Christian burn down this house, thinking the devil's in it. And when I say crazy, I mean meth head. And when I say Christian, I mean meth head. When we purchased this house, the lumber yards were still rolling relatively strong in Aberdeen, which was good for Hoquiam. It was a bustling city with so much potential. That would end a few years after the purchase of our home. While we lived there, Devin was a police officer in Ocean Shores, and I worked at the bank in Aberdeen. The house next to ours had a for sale sign outside of it the first half of the year that we lived there. Then another sign was put up saying, "New reduced price." It would be the next summer when it finally sold to a family with another little girl around Tilly's age. The girls instantly became best friends, and their front yard friendship was the icebreaker for the adults to meet and mingle. Devin and I invited them over for 4th of July for a barbecue. We all hit it off, and the drinks and unfiltered conversations began to flow that night. While the husbands are in the street lighting off fireworks with the kids and other neighbors partying on the block, I'm standing with the wife, Gretchen. She's a short native girl from Tahola and has a mouth of a sailor when she drinks. She leans in real close and says, "Can I ask you something without you thinking I'm batshit crazy?" I'm thinking, dang, is she gonna say something really batshit crazy right now? Because I'd really like my daughter to be able to continue playing with her new best friend. So I ask straight up, "How crazy are you talking?" Praying that she doesn't ask to get high in my bathroom, but she hits me with a curveball and says that she thinks their house is haunted. I'm like, oh, word? She asks me if I know anything about the history of the house, but I tell her we just moved into ours a couple years ago, and that their house had been up for sale until they moved in. Gretchen asked if we've experienced anything otherworldly happening at our place, then asks if I've ever felt like I'd fallen out of reality. like a sudden rush of irrational, heart-racing fear when nothing is around. The topic continues as the men come back, and while the girls play in Tilly's room, me and Dev sit with our jaws hanging open as Gretchen and Stevie trade stories about the real haunted house batshittery going on next door. From disembodied footsteps and whispers to Stevie pulling out his big beer belly and showing us 3 long purple scratches wrapping across his ribs. Faucets turning on and off randomly through the night, cupboards slamming. Super scary shit. The scariest being when Gretchen told us that their daughter almost drowned in the bathtub a few days prior. Gretchen was shampooing her daughter's hair when she felt her daughter's head get pulled from her hands. She sank underwater, and at first, Gretchen thought that she was playing a joke, so she waited just a second for her to pop back up. But as Gretchen watched the shampoo bubbles begin to pop and melt in the water, she saw her daughter at the bottom of the tub, with her eyes and mouth wide open. A look of horror was frozen on her face. But there were no bubbles coming from her nose or mouth. Seeing this, Gretchen quickly pulls her body from the water. She was breathing, but her body and expression went limp and lifeless when she left the water. Gretchen and Stevie threw her into the truck and ripped out to the hospital up the hill. Doctors there couldn't find anything wrong with her. As the conversation continued, we drunkenly joked that they were always welcome to stay at our place anytime the paranormal stuff became too much. Then, almost immediately after our small laughter subsided, like we manifested that to be the plan for the night, Dev points out the window and goes, "No fucking way." I go look out the blinds over to Gretchen and Stevie's house. From the side window, we can see their kitchen window and a bedroom window on the floor above. In that window, we watch as the light in the room turns on and off over and over. Gretchen and Stevie don't even leave the table to look. To this day, I don't know why they would all go home that night, even after Dev had offered them the guest bedroom. I guess it was that liquid courage on Stevie's prideful lips. It evoked his alpha male alter ego. I also think that he was trying to show off to my cop husband, but he stood up and was like, "Fuck that. I'm not getting kicked out of my house." His drunk ass storms up the stairs and kicks open the door of our daughter's bedroom, scaring the shit out of the sleeping girls. He grabs his daughter and the family leave that night, determined to handle their poltergeist problem. Devin and I are just kind of stunned, a little drunk, but mainly a bit concerned for our neighbors. Like a bunch of creeps, we post up by the side window and see if we can catch any of the action. For the most part, the house seems asleep, but every few minutes, just as I would get bored, the lights would start flickering in various rooms of the house. I realized this was something that probably had been happening all the time, but just come to our attention that night. Gretchen and I follow up the next day. She says that she and Stevie are having a disagreement about how to handle the problem. Stevie wanted to bring in a priest, whereas Gretchen wanted to bring in an authentic shaman or move altogether. I was in no more of a position then than I am now to be suggesting things, but I told her that in the interim, she and her family were welcome to stay with us. They were gone before the end of the summer. Though we didn't experience the happenings ourselves, the area just felt a bit more dim without the family next door. And this home sat vacant once more, only now we had this weird knowledge of strange happenings going on inside. That house stayed empty until we moved almost 2 years later, and it always made me uncomfortable. Comparatively, our house was only on the market for a few months before it sold. We opted not to disclose to the buyers that they had a haunted house next door, but I'm sure they figured it out eventually. Oddly enough, it wasn't even the ghost house that made us eventually sell, and I'm still proud to be from the harbor. Go Grizzlies. That being said, we moved to Texas after one of those crazy meth heads tried to lure our daughter out of our front yard. The homeless addict population growth was becoming an epidemic, and we couldn't raise our Tilly in that mess. So we moved. Well, that's all I've got as far as ghost stories, so thanks for reading. I grew up on the beautiful island of Guam. My father was in the military, so we had a nice house on a base. Unfortunately, I was terrified of sleeping in my room, so I slept on my parents' bedroom floor. One evening, I shifted my pillows around while having trouble falling asleep. During the process, I noticed a pale and purple finger that looked like it belonged to a corpse. I stared in horror, unsure what to do, and watched as it slowly retreated under the bed. I covered the spot with a pillow and tried my hardest to sleep, but I just couldn't. One day, I looked under my parents' bed to see bright yellow glowing eyes that definitely didn't belong to one of our cats. It was staring me down, and I felt uneasy, like I wasn't safe, and I wasn't meant to see it. In that house, I regularly heard glass shattering in the kitchen, only to discover nothing was broken. There were also heavy footsteps that ran up and down the hallway. From the corner of her eye, my sister often saw someone hanging in my parents' bedroom, only to have it disappear when she looked. I saw shadow people running around in darker areas of the house. My father would tell the spirits to leave in peace, and things would be quiet for a week or two, before getting weird again. This happened when I started living alone, not long after I had just moved in. I think it must have been the first week. I found out that my new apartment was in the path of an oncoming typhoon. That night, I'd gotten off to sleep all right, but I woke up in the middle of the night to hear the sound of the wind and rain lashing my windows. It was so loud, I just couldn't get back to sleep. I was lying there in bed, thinking about nothing in particular, when I heard something. It was coming from the front door. It was the doorbell. Who the hell would be ringing the doorbell of my new apartment? I asked myself. I crept downstairs and took a look through the peephole. There was a person out there. I was freaked out, but I asked, "Who is it?" Even I heard the fear in my voice.
Hey, it's me, man.
It was my friend, literally my best friend. He was one of the only ones who knew my address. "Why didn't you just tell me you were coming, man? It's the middle of the night," I said through the door. I tried to get a look at him, but it was dark and he had his hat pulled down. That didn't matter since we were friends. I mean, it was a little weird, but I've known him for years. "Hey, you did really well to get here in this storm, dude," I called out and started to unlock the door. That was the moment that something dawned on me. Best friend or not, why was he out here? Barely talking, not responding, and how did he make it here? I could still hear the ferocity of the typhoon against the door. Another odd thing, he didn't have a driver's license. Even if he somehow caught a bus, he would have had to walk for a long while. I didn't know the area all that well, but it seemed a bit too late for buses. Besides, who turns up in the middle of the night during a storm, unannounced? These were all red flags, and I didn't like it. What the hell was this? I brought my eye closer to the peephole. "Hey, bud, how'd you get here?" I asked cautiously. We fell into an awkward silence while the typhoon raged on. I brought my eye closer to the peephole. I wanted to get a closer look at him. His skin was disturbingly pale. It reminded me of a waxwork skin. His eyes flitted back and forth as if they were remote controlled. That wasn't my friend. I wasn't even sure if that was a human. It was pretending, whatever it was. I didn't let on that I was scared, but I was petrified. I watched that thing out there, which looked like my best friend, standing there, smiling insanely, occasionally twitching at the corners of its lips. I had to get away from the door once I saw that. I went into another room and tried my best to compose myself. I tried to think about what to do next. All the while, that friend thing repeated the same line it delivered earlier, as if it was all he knew, like an actor practicing lines.
Hey, it's me, man. Hey, it's me, man.
I called my friend, the one it was impersonating. He said that he wasn't at my house. I knew it wasn't him, but I had to be 100% sure. That thing was rather convincing. I went upstairs and back to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. I didn't know how long that thing stayed outside my door, but I heard it occasionally repeating its line.
Hey, it's me, man.
After a sleepless night, the sun rose and the typhoon subsided. It took a long while for me to get the confidence to approach the peephole, but when I did, I found that it was gone. I'm a 30-year-old male who needs help breaking up with my girlfriend. I know that sounds awful, but hold your judgments until you hear my story. I honestly can't tell if there's something really wrong here, or if I'm blowing things out of proportion. Seriously, I need you guys to tell me which it is. Ashley is 28 and teaches first grade. Our first few dates were amazing, and we have a ton in common. I actually thought that I might marry this girl. God, that sounds scary to say now. We never actually planned or agreed to move in together, but she had an awful roommate. She stayed at my place more and more until one day, I found her credit card bill in my mail. I don't know when she changed her address. Ashley gets home earlier, so she's usually the one who checks it. I tried making a joke of it, like, does this mean we officially live together? But then she pointed out that it had been over 6 weeks since she slept at her apartment, and how I had specifically helped her pack a few bags myself because I was, quote-unquote, tired of dealing with her roommate every time she needed something. I mean, we had a real conversation about it, and she had genuinely valid points. All of those things were true. What did I expect? I should clarify, it was 6 weeks since she had slept in her own bed, but we had been seeing each other for almost 3 months total. I know that's not that much better, but it's something. Time really has a way of moving when things are good, and I promise, they were great. I already thought I was in love with her. By the end of the moving in conversation, I was nervous for all the same reasons you're probably thinking now, but at the same time, I felt really good about our chances. I've had other girlfriends, but none of them made me feel like this. Over the next few weeks, I began noticing more changes around the house, but that's normal, right? If she's going to live there too, I want her to feel like the space is equally hers. I guess I just imagined it would be something that we did together, but I never lived with a woman before. It's not like the changes were even bad, and when I told my friends, they acted like it was the most normal thing in the world. Maybe that part is, but I want to include everything so you guys have the full picture. I think our 6-month anniversary is the first time I experienced a for sure red flag versus the previous issues where I felt things could be largely my fault. I didn't know that half-year anniversaries were even a thing, but I came home to find a romantic candlelit dinner. She'd made my favorite meal, and I thought it was just a sweet surprise until we finished eating. And then she pulled a gift bag out of the closet, and I asked, "What's the occasion?" I was so focused on opening the gift that I didn't immediately see the change in her face. It was an extremely thoughtful present. I still can't believe she remembered a set of tools that I talked about once. But when I leaned over to kiss her, she pulled away and said, "You don't know the occasion?" in a tone that clearly indicated I should. That was our first big fight. Not only had I forgotten our half-anniversary, I, quote-unquote, didn't even care. I was only trying to convey that I didn't understand, not that I didn't care. It felt like she wasn't even hearing my actual words. But I should clarify, I'm not sure if fight is the right word. It was definitely a big something, only I wouldn't describe her as angry so much as heartbroken. And that's how every argument is, whether I leave the toilet seat up or take too long returning a call. I know heartbroken sounds like a strong word, but I don't know what else to call it. She cries like someone has died. There are times that I think she's going to throw up and pass out. It takes hours to calm her down, and only after super intense conversation, one of those bare your soul talks, do the arguments finally end. Then her face will be swollen the rest of the night. I'm always terrified that someone's going to think I hit her. After the anniversary fight, I walked on eggshells for the next few days, and everything went back to normal. If anything, we were closer than ever. I don't want to spill her life story on the internet, but she's had a traumatic childhood that left her with severe abandonment issues. We all carry our burdens, and it seemed like the simplest thing in the world to be a little more mindful of special occasions, especially since she's so good to me. Even though she also works full-time, she still does all the cooking, 90% of the cleaning. I can't remember the last time I had to do my own laundry, and she sews. But then there's things like when my friends wanted me to come on a weekend camping trip. Trevor was getting married, and he wanted a weekend of nostalgia instead of a bachelor party. I wasn't about to deny him that. I didn't even consider the possibility that my going would upset Ashley. We were in bed when I read Trevor's message, so I began telling her all about him and the camping trips that we'd take as kids. She seemed genuinely interested until I got to the part about going away for the weekend. Then, just like the anniversary, a switch flipped, and she went from laying on my chest to nearly falling off the bed. She wouldn't even look at me. We fought about it for most of the night. At first, she didn't want me to go at all. Then she wanted to come with me. And I actually had to explain why I would be the biggest asshole in the world if I brought her. She felt that I was choosing my best friend over her, and we had to agree to disagree on that front. If it had been a regular camping trip, I would have declined the invitation and stayed home, but it was literally the one thing my best friend wanted for his wedding. Ashley threatened to leave me, and I had to promise that I would never go camping again to ensure that she would still be there when I came home. That was probably a mistake, but I felt so bad seeing her cry like that. Her eyes do this weird vibrating thing, and it always freaks me out. When I see that, I know any chance of logical conversation is gone out the window. Those fights always end with me caving to whatever she wants, and then she apologizes with a story from her childhood that seems to make it all sound completely reasonable. Feels like I'm losing my mind. Things were a little rocky after the camping trip, and her mood will change even now if someone brings it up, but still, there's just so many positives, right? The next major fight happened after a storm damaged my parents' front porch. Dad wanted me to help replace the roof, and his insurance company was even paying us for the work. Yet, Ashley was furious because she wanted me to binge watch a new show with her. This was the first time I didn't feel guilty when she cried. I was too angry. When she saw that I wouldn't back down, she decided to come with me instead. I didn't see any reason not to let her. I thought it would be nice for my parents to get to know her better. She sees my dad semi-regularly because of work, but they don't exactly have meaningful conversations there. She's only met my mom twice, and those were very brief intervals. I expected Ashley to stay inside while Dad and I worked, but she tried to stay with us instead. Dad was getting annoyed even faster than me, so I texted Mom an SOS. A few minutes later, she was asking Ashley for help with lunch. Everything seemed fine when we ate, and Mom was able to keep Ashley inside while we finished the roof. We stayed for maybe 20 minutes after the cleanup, and everyone still seemed like they were getting along. If it hadn't been for the conversation that came afterward, I would have never suspected anything was off. As soon as we left, Ashley began to jokingly discuss how I had one of those mothers who was jealous of their son's girlfriend. This really took me by surprise because that just couldn't be further from the truth. My mom couldn't care less about my dating life. I'm sure if I got married, she would take greater interest, but I hadn't told her much about my relationship with Ashley. I wasn't even upset, just confused at how she came to that conclusion. Hell, if I tried to talk to my mom every day, she'd be rejecting my calls inside the first week. Ashley used progressively ridiculous arguments, starting with how Mom came outside to quote-unquote drag her away from me, until I finally became annoyed, and I told her the real reason. that was a mistake. We had our biggest fight yet, but once it was finally over, I thought that that was the end of it. Then Mom called that Monday to say that Ashley seemed a bit unstable. She had told a few embarrassing stories from my childhood, thinking that it would be an easy icebreaker. But Ashley responded to each one with her own story about me, like it was some kind of competition. The whole thing gives me a headache. For my mom to actually say something about my girlfriend, I knew it probably, definitely, wasn't just me at this point, but I still didn't know what to do about it. That same evening, I came home to a steak dinner, and without even telling her I spoke to my mom, she apologized for the night before and blamed it on that time of the month. At heart, I'm a coward, so I let life resume as normal, until I found a jar of toenail clippings hidden beneath the bed. This is what finally prompted my post. They were definitely mine. I mean, either way, gross, but okay, look, I'm a disgusting guy who leaves my toenail clippings lying around, and I just assume that she's vacuuming them up when cleaning. Fuck me, I get it. But she had to have been collecting them the whole time that we've been together. It was a lot. I bypassed the snooping fight entirely by telling her that one of my golf balls rolled under the bed, and her face was pale before I even finished my sentence. I tried to ask, why are my toenails in a jar? With as little judgment as possible, but I challenge you to say that with a straight face. For a few seconds, we stared at each other in silence. I thought she was going to have a panic attack. Then her face instantly calmed, and she explained that they were for some kind of prank. That I wasn't supposed to find them yet. I'm not sure what I could have said to that. Apparently, the whole idea was to film your partner's reaction to learning they had a jar of your toenails. I guess I just don't get it. To me, it seemed like she came up with that on the spot. But how was I supposed to press the issue without sounding like a lunatic myself? Instead, I pretended to be relieved and walked back into the bedroom, where I promptly flushed the clippings down the toilet. I don't believe in any kind of hocus-pocus stuff, but I don't know. That's just creepy. I'm lucky I did it so fast, too. Not 5 seconds after they were gone, she came into the bedroom, asking what I had done with them. When I told her, a look of complete fury flashed over her face. Then it was gone. She tried to act like it wasn't a big deal, and I pretended to believe her, but it was clearly a very huge deal. So, what do you guys think? Is this sad and desperate, or scary and dangerous? Because I'll tell you, I'm feeling a healthy dose of both right now. Update. Wow, I really didn't expect so many responses. Thank you all so much for taking the time to read my story. I know that it was a long one. I still haven't made it through all of the comments, but I've read enough to know that you're right. Regardless of her intentions, the relationship isn't working out. We could both be happier with other people, so I'm going to end it this weekend. I'll update you all once it's done. Thanks again. Update. Hi everyone, me again. I'm sorry that it's taken over a month for me to post this and that I haven't responded to any of your messages. For all the support many of you have shown, some comments were a bit harder to swallow than others. I'm still in a fragile state, so I can't honestly say how long this post will stay up either, but I'd like to get this out while I can and update those of you who have been so helpful. The original post was uploaded before work on a Friday morning, and by that night, so many of you had opened my eyes that I knew I had to end the relationship. The breakup itself was awful. We both cried through the night, just talking everything through, except the toenails. Neither one of us was anxious to revisit that topic. She begged me for a second chance, said all the things you guys guessed that she would say. Things like how she couldn't survive without me, and I was the only good thing in her life. When she finally accepted none of those were going to work, she changed tactics. Then it became all about how I couldn't survive without her, and how no one would ever love me, not like her. That's just the tip of the iceberg. I've seen people behave this way in movies, but never in real life. Since she, quote-unquote, didn't have anywhere to go, I offered to stay with my parents for a couple of weeks while she made other arrangements. I didn't want anything to be harder than it had to be. I was angry and hurt about everything in general, but not spiteful. Part of me still loved her, and I truly wanted her to be okay. Well, the very first night I was away, Ashley's mom called, and it's relevant to know that her parents live about 12 hours away in another state. Before I could finish saying hello, she began screaming. She thought I physically forced her daughter out of my house, and she was calling to inform me that was illegal. When she finally let me speak, I told her everything. I never wanted to embarrass Ashley. I didn't even tell my friends about the toenails. I just wanted us to move on with our lives. But if she was going to tell stories like that, I was damn sure setting the record straight. I started by switching the call to FaceTime so she could see my parents sitting in the background, fully ready to corroborate my story. And her face turned to one of actual fear. I actually heard her mutter, "Not again," after a defeated sigh. She was quick to apologize and explained that Ashley had called insisting that they both needed to come down now because she couldn't even get her car keys out of my house. I was so angry that I told her mom why we really broke up, all of it, right down to the toenails. The silence was palpable. I had to make sure that the call hadn't dropped. Then I heard her tell her husband she was saving toenails again, and she sounded frightened. I had to know what she'd been planning to use them for. Had to. Apparently, Ashley had been known to dabble in the occult. She'd tried various potions, spells, curses, you name it. Her parents weren't sure what she planned to do with them, but the last time they caught her saving toenails was her senior year of high school. Her mother discovered the hoard at the bottom of her sock drawer, and Ashley tried to play it off as a joke. But when they were thrown out, she lost her mind. Her mom said it sounded like she believed those clippings were the only thing holding her relationship together, but none of it was making much sense. To make matters worse, her high school sweetheart dumped her the next day, and she never stopped blaming her mother. She couldn't be convinced that the two events were unrelated. Altogether, I talked to her mom for over an hour while deciding the best way to proceed. We wanted to do things as gently as possible, so we agreed to pretend our conversation hadn't happened. Calling Ashley out on her lies would only make things worse, and none of us really knew what she might do while alone. I also began to worry about the fact that she was in my house. What if she started destroying everything? For that reason, I agreed to return home and sleep on the couch. Her parents were going to rent a U-Haul in the morning and drive down with her brother and his two friends. Then, she'd be able to stay with her family while she got the help she needed. We all felt really good about the plan. At least I thought we did. It turns out her brother is only 17, pretty inattentive, and extremely gullible. He would later swear that he didn't understand it was a secret, but regardless of his motives or intentions, he spilled the beans. Not only that, he spilled the beans without telling anyone. When I got home, Ashley welcomed me with open arms. I said I wasn't ready to sleep in the same bed, but that I had time to calm down and I wanted to continue our conversation in the morning. She quickly agreed and offered me some leftover pasta she had made. I didn't want to risk upsetting her over something so small, and I actually was starving, so I ate it. Not long after, I suddenly felt very sleepy. And the last thing I remember before passing out is a look of triumph spreading across Ashley's face. I woke up in the hospital. My throat and my chest were on fire, and every breath made it worse. I then learned that after passing out, Ashley managed to drag me into bed before removing all of the smoke alarms and throwing a lit match onto the couch. She then took a handful of the same drugs that were in my food and crawled into bed where we were supposed to die together. The only reason we survived was because my neighbor and I happened to be very close. He and his partner drug Ashley and I out of the house while their 15-year-old called the fire department. My house was completely ruined. I'm still dealing with the insurance company and Ashley's parents. They had to move her to a mental institution. Right now, it's still being determined if she's legally competent to handle a trial or something like that. Honestly, I've been letting my parents do all of the talking when it comes to that stuff. They give me the updates later and ask if I want to contest or push for certain things, but right now, I still don't know what I want, except to heal. I want to sleep without having nightmares. I want to eat without wondering if something's been put in my food. But as far as Ashley goes, God, I just don't know. Maybe that's why I finally came back here, because I'm stuck again. I really don't know. I only know that I've been writing for over an hour, and I'm tired. I guess I'm just gonna hit the post button and see what happens. Thanks for sticking around. Well, friends, it appears we've reached the end of tonight's episode. Thanks for joining me tonight. Whether it's your first time or you're a regular, your support means the world over here. We've got brand new episodes every Friday night. Keep those eyes open long enough for those deep sleep videos. And of course, double features. Subscribe, tap the bell, and you'll never miss a thing. Big thanks to those who shared their stories, and a huge shout out to all of my patrons, whom we appreciate so very much. Tracy S., Tamra K., Monica L., Zoe Watt, Shelley B., Donald C., The Dark Cosmos, Marion T., Rat Girl, Alicia S., Aaron G., Nikki H., Mr. Revenant, Naz K., Brendan G., Paul T., Nicholas C., Lizanne, Arlene F., and Adrian. If you want to support The Darkest Hour in other ways, consider joining my Patreon. Check out patreon.com/thedarkesthour or click the link in the description to learn more. Do you have stories like these? I'd love to share them. Send them to me, Amanda, darkesthour@gmail.com, or on the Darkest Hour subreddit, The Darkest Hour YT. Stay spooky.